The wisdom of letting go. There's a particular kind of beauty in watching autumn leaves release themselves from the branches that held them through spring's promise and summer's abundance. They don't cling desperately to the tree, fighting against the inevitable change of seasons. They don't resist the wind that loosens their grip, nor do they mourn the green vitality they once possessed. Instead, they surrender gracefully, purposefully, completing their cycle with a final dance of the air before returning to the earth that nourished them. In their letting go, there is no defeat, no failure, no loss of dignity. There is only the wisdom of knowing when to hold on and when to release. We humans struggle with this wisdom. We grip tightly to what we know, to what feels safe, to what once brought us joy even when it has long since ceased to nourish us. We hold on to relationships that have run their course, careers that drain our spirit, beliefs that no longer reflect who we become, grudges that poison our peace, and versions of ourselves that we've outgrown. We clutch at the past with white knuckles, afraid that letting go means losing something essential about ourselves, terrified that in the release we'll discover there's nothing left to hold us together. But what if the opposite were true? What if the very things we're holding on to are the weights preventing us from rising? What if our tight grip is not protecting us, but imprisoning us? What if letting go is not about loss, but about liberation? Not about ending, but about transformation? This chapter is an invitation to explore the profound wisdom of letting go, not as an act of giving up, but as a courageous choice to honor the flow of life, not as resignation, but as a radical form of self-love, not as weakness, but as the deepest strength we can cultivate. Through these pages, we'll journey together through the landscape of release, examining what it means to loosen our grip on what no longer serves us, to trust the uncertain path ahead, and to discover the unexpected freedom that waits on the other side of surrender. The wisdom of letting go is not a lesson learned once and mastered forever. It's a practice, a daily choosing, a continual returning to the truth that life is movement. Change is constant, and our peace depends not on controlling our circumstances, but on how we relate to them. It's the understanding that we are not meant to carry everything forever, that some things are meant to be temporary teachers, brief companions on our journey, and that releasing them with gratitude is how we honor both their gift and our own growth. In the pages ahead, you'll find not answers but reflections, not rules but invitations, not prescriptions but possibilities. This is not a manual for letting go. It's a meditation on what becomes possible when we do. 1. Releasing what no longer serves your peace. Peace is not a destination we arrive at once we've arranged our lives perfectly. It's not waiting for us at the end of achievement, accumulation, or accomplishment. Peace is a state of being we cultivate moment by moment, choice by choice, release by release. And one of the most powerful choices we can make in service of our peace is to consciously, deliberately, courageously release what no longer serves it. But how do we know what no longer serves us? In a world that constantly tells us to want more, achieve more, be more, the very idea of letting something go can feel like failure. We've been conditioned to believe that growth means addition, adding skills, relationships, possessions, experiences, identities. Rarely are we taught that growth often requires subtraction, that sometimes the most profound expansion of our lives comes not from what we take on, but from what we're willing to put down. What no longer serves your peace makes itself known through the language of your body and the whispers of your soul. It's the relationship that leaves you feeling depleted rather than nourished, the commitment that fills you with dread rather than purpose, the belief about yourself that narrows your world rather than expands it. It's the habit that numbs you rather than enlivens you, the grudge that hardens your heart rather than opens it, the standard you're holding yourself to that diminishes rather than honors who you truly are. These things that no longer serve us often once did. That's what makes releasing them so complex. The job that now drains your spirit may have once excited you, fulfilled you, given you identity and purpose. The friendship that now feels one-sided may have once been reciprocal and life-giving. The belief you held about what you should accomplish by a certain age may have once motivated you forward. We feel disloyal letting go of what once served us, as if gratitude for what something gave us in the past requires us to carry it forever into the future. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of loyalty, gratitude, and love. True gratitude doesn't mean clinging to what was. It means honoring what was while remaining open to what is and what might be. It means saying, "Thank you for what you taught me, for how you helped me, for who I was able to become because of you. And now I release you, not because you weren't valuable, but because I've learned what you had to teach me. I release you not with resentment, but with appreciation, not with regret, but with recognition that all things have their season." Consider the woman who finally admits that the career she spent a decade building is crushing her spirit. Every external measure says she should be grateful. The prestige, the salary, the admiration of others. But internally, she's withering. Her creativity is stifled. Her values are compromised. Her body is showing the signs of chronic stress. What once felt like a mountain she was proud to climb now feels like a prison she's terrified to leave. The thought of releasing this career feels irresponsible, ungrateful, weak. But is it? Or is it the bravest thing she could possibly do to honor her inner knowing over external expectations, to choose her peace over others' approval, to trust that she's allowed to change, to grow, to want something different than she once wanted? Consider the man who realizes a belief he's carried his whole life, that his worth is determined by his productivity, is destroying his ability to simply be, to rest, to enjoy his life. This belief served him once, pushed him to achieve, to provide, to prove himself in a world that judged him harshly. But now it's a tyrant, never satisfied, always demanding more, denying the peace that comes from enoughness. Releasing this belief feels dangerous, like dismantling the very foundation he's built his life upon. Without it, who is he? But with it, is he even living or just endlessly performing? Releasing what no longer serves your peace requires you become exquisitely attuned to the difference between discomfort that signals growth and discomfort that signals misalignment. Not all discomfort is bad. Sometimes we're uncomfortable because we're stretching, learning, becoming. But there's a distinct quality to the discomfort of misalignment. It doesn't energize, it depletes. It doesn't challenge you to expand. It asks you to contract, to diminish, to betray yourself in small ways that accumulate into a fundamental disconnection from your own truth. The practice of releasing what no longer serves your peace begins with honest self-inquiry. You must be willing to ask yourself difficult questions and sit with uncomfortable answers. You must be willing to disappoint others, to change your mind, to admit you were wrong about what you thought you wanted or needed. You must be willing to grieve what you're releasing even as you step toward what's calling you. Ask yourself, what am I holding on to out of genuine love and alignment? And what am I holding on to out of fear, obligation, or habit? What energizes me and what drains me? What opens my heart and what closes it? What helps me breathe deeper and what constricts my breath? What allows me to be authentically myself and what requires me to perform a version of myself I've outgrown? These questions don't always have immediate answers. Sometimes we need to sit with them for days, weeks, months. Sometimes the answer arrives not as a thought, but as a feeling, a knowing that bypasses logic and speaks directly to our soul. And sometimes the answer is clear, but we're not yet ready to act on it. That's okay too. Awareness is always a first step. Simply knowing what no longer serves your peace is itself a form of freedom, even if you're not yet ready to release it. It's important to acknowledge that releasing what no longer serves you doesn't mean everything will suddenly feel easy or perfect. Sometimes releasing something that doesn't serve your peace will initially create more discomfort. The discomfort of uncertainty, of others' reactions, of stepping into the unknown. The woman who leaves a prestigious career will face financial uncertainty and others' judgments. The man who releases his productivity-based worth will face the anxiety of redefining himself. But this is a productive discomfort of growth, of alignment, of integrity. It's uncomfortable in a way that strengthening a muscle is uncomfortable. It's building something essential even as it challenges us. What no longer serves your peace is often deeply entwined with your identity, your relationships, your sense of security. Releasing it isn't a simple matter of deciding and moving on. It's a process, sometimes a long one, of disentangling, of grieving, of finding new ground to stand on. Be patient with yourself in this process. You're not just letting go of something external. You're often letting go of who you thought you were, who you thought you had to be, what you thought life required of you. And here's what's so beautiful and mysterious. When you release what no longer serves your peace, you create space. Space for what does serve you. Space for new possibilities you couldn't even imagine while you were gripping so tightly to what was. Space for a deeper authenticity, a truer version of yourself to emerge. Nature abhors a vacuum. They say, when you empty your hands of what you've been carrying, life has a way of filling them with what you actually need. This doesn't happen immediately, and it doesn't happen without your participation. You must be willing to sit in the space, to resist the urge to immediately fill it with something new just to avoid the discomfort of emptiness. You must trust that the space itself is valuable, that in the emptiness is possibility, that in the silence between what was and what will be is where transformation occurs. Releasing what no longer serves your peace is ultimately an act of profound self-respect. It's saying to yourself, to life, to the universe, I matter. My peace matters. My inner knowing matters more than external validation. My authentic self matters more than others' expectations. It's declaring that you're not here to carry what doesn't belong to you, to force what isn't meant for you, to pretend alignment where there is none. It's also an act of faith. Faith that you'll be okay without what you're releasing. Faith that something better suited to who you're becoming is possible. Faith that your peace is worth the uncertainty of change. This faith doesn't eliminate fear, but becomes a stronger force than fear, a deeper truth than the stories fear tells. So begin to notice. Pay attention to what lightens you and what burdens you. Listen to your body's wisdom. It always knows before your mind catches up. Honor what has served you in the past without feeling obligated to carry it into your future. And when you recognize what no longer serves your peace, gather your courage and begin the sacred work of release. Not because it's easy, but because your peace, your genuine, deep, abiding peace, is worth fighting for, even when the fight is against your own resistance to let go. 2. The gentle art of surrender. The word surrender carries complicated connotations in our culture. We associate with defeat, with giving up, with weakness. To surrender in battle is to lose. To surrender to an addiction is to fail. We're taught from childhood to fight, to persist, to never give up, to overcome. Surrender, in this framework, is the opposite of strength. It's what we do when we've exhausted every other option, when we finally admit we can't win. But there's another way to understand surrender. Not as defeat, but as a profound wisdom. Not as weakness, but as a subtle and sophisticated strength. The surrender I'm speaking of is not the surrender of your values, your dignity, or your agency. It's not giving up on what matters, or accepting mistreatment, or resigning yourself to suffering. This surrender is something entirely different. It's the gentle art of releasing your resistance to what is, of accepting reality as it presents itself rather than as you wish it would be, of loosening your grip on outcomes you cannot control. This kind of surrender is not passive. It's perhaps the most active choice you can make. It requires tremendous awareness, courage, and trust. It means constantly discerning between what's yours to change and what's yours to accept, what's within your circle of influence and what lies beyond it. It means bringing your full effort to what you can affect while releasing your attachment to results, to timelines, to the exact form your dreams should take. Think of water, that ancient symbol of surrender and flow. Water doesn't fight the shape of the vessel that contains it. It surrenders to the shape and becomes it. Water doesn't resist the obstacles in its path. It finds its way around them, over them, through them, patient and persistent in its gentle power. Water doesn't refuse to move downward because it prefers to move upward. It follows gravity, follows the path of least resistance, and in doing so shapes landscapes, carves canyons, nourishes all life. Yet water is not weak. Water is one of the most powerful forces on earth. Its power comes not from rigidity but from flexibility, not from force but from yielding, not from resistance but from surrender. Over time, water wears down the hardest stone, moves mountains, transforms deserts. This is a paradox of surrender. In softness is strength, in yielding is power, in acceptance is transformation. We spend so much of our lives fighting reality. We argue with what has already happened, replaying scenarios in our minds, wishing we'd said something different, done something different, been someone different. We resist the present moment because it doesn't match our expectations, our preferences, our plans. We exhaust ourselves trying to control things that are fundamentally beyond our control. Other people's choices, the passage of time, the presence of uncertainty, the inevitability of change and loss. This resistance creates suffering, not the pain of difficult circumstances themselves, but the additional suffering of refusing to accept that the difficult circumstances exist. Pain is inevitable in human life. Suffering is often a result of our resistance to that pain. As the saying goes, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. The suffering is a layer we add when we reject what is, when we insist reality should be different than it is, when we exhaust ourselves fighting battles that cannot be won. Consider the person diagnosed with a chronic illness. The illness itself brings challenges, limitations, discomfort. This is pain. But if they spend all their energy fighting against the reality of the illness, refusing to accept it, constantly raging at the unfairness, resenting their body for betraying them, comparing themselves to who they used to be or might have been, they add layers of suffering to the pain that's already present. The gentle art of surrender in this situation doesn't mean giving up on treatment or self-care. It means accepting this is what is true right now. This is a reality I'm working with. I can't change that I have this illness, but I can change how I relate to it, how I live with it, what I do with the life I still have. This surrender often leads to an unexpected discovery. When we stop fighting reality, we actually have more energy to work skillfully with it. Acceptance doesn't paralyze us. Resistance does. When we surrender to what is, we can see it clearly, respond to it wisely, find creative ways to move forward from where we actually are rather than where we wish we were. The gentle art of surrender also involves surrendering our timeline, our attachment to things happening when and how we think they should. We live in a culture obsessed with speed, efficiency, and immediate gratification. We want our goals achieved quickly, our growth to be linear and measurable, our healing to follow a predictable schedule. But life doesn't work this way. Growth happens in spirals, not straight lines. Healing happens in its own time, not according to our impatience. The best things in life, love, trust, wisdom, creativity, cannot be rushed. Surrendering your timeline means releasing the anxiety of not yet and the pressure of should be by now. It means trusting that you're exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, even when it feels slow or frustrating or not enough. It means recognizing that your life is unfolding according to a wisdom larger than your conscious mind's limited perspective. This doesn't mean you don't set goals or work toward them with discipline and dedication. It means you hold your goals with open hands rather than clenched fists. You give your best effort and then surrender the outcome. You trust the process even when you can't see the progress. You believe that what's meant for you won't miss you, and what's not meant for you won't force itself to fit, no matter how much you try to make it. There's a beautiful practice in some spiritual traditions called active surrender or surrendered action. It's a practice of bringing your full presence, effort, and devotion to whatever you're doing while simultaneously releasing your attachment to the results. You work as if everything depends on you, and you surrender as if everything depends on grace. You honor both your agency and your humility. You recognize that you're a participant in life, not the sole author of it. This kind of surrender transforms how you experience both success and failure. Success becomes something you receive with gratitude rather than grasping, knowing it came through you, but not entirely from you. Failure becomes information rather than identity, feedback rather than condemnation. When you're not so tightly attached to outcomes, you can be more courageous in your attempts, more resilient in your setbacks, more creative in your approaches. The gentle art of surrender also involves surrendering your need to know, to understand, to have everything figured out. Uncertainty is one of the conditions of human existence, yet we exhaust ourselves trying to eliminate it. We want guarantees, assurances, certainty about how things will turn out. We want to know we're making the right decision, choosing the right path, becoming who we're supposed to become. But life offers no such guarantees. The future is always uncertain, always unwritten, always responsive to forces both within and beyond our control. Surrendering to uncertainty doesn't mean being careless or irresponsible. It means acknowledging that you can make thoughtful, informed decisions and still not know for certain how things will unfold. It means being willing to step forward even when the path is entirely clear, trusting that you'll figure out as you go, that you have the resources to handle what comes, that not knowing is not only okay, but actually the natural state of being human. There's something deeply liberating about admitting, I don't know. It releases the pressure of having to have all the answers, of being certain, of defending a particular position or prediction. It creates space for curiosity, for learning, for being surprised, for changing your mind. Some of the wisest people you'll ever meet are comfortable saying, I don't know, far more often than those who claim to have everything figured out. Perhaps the deepest layer of surrender is surrendering the illusion of control itself. We tell ourselves elaborate stories about how much control we have. We believe if we just work hard enough, plan well enough, make the right choices, we can control our lives, ensure good outcomes, protect ourselves from loss and pain. But this is largely an illusion, a useful one sometimes, one that motivates us to take action and responsibility, but an illusion nonetheless. The truth is, we control far less than we think we do. We don't control whether we get sick or stay healthy, whether people love us or leave us, whether our plans work out or fall apart, whether we have 20 more years or 20 more minutes. We don't control the economy, the weather, other people's choices, or the countless unseen forces that shape our lives every moment. What we do control is limited but powerful. Our attention, our attitude, our response, our choices in this present moment. Surrendering the illusion of control is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. It's terrifying because it means admitting our vulnerability, our smallness in the vastness of existence, our fundamental inability to guarantee our own safety or that of those we love. But it's also liberating because it releases us from the exhausting burden of trying to control what cannot be controlled. It allows us to focus our energy where it can actually make a difference, on how we show up, how we treat others, how we respond to circumstances, what we do with this moment we've been given. The gentle art of surrender is learned slowly, practiced daily, and never fully mastered. Some days you'll surrender beautifully, flowing with whatever comes, accepting with grace, trusting with ease. Other days you'll grip tightly, resist fiercely, demand certainty and control. Both are part of being human. The practice is not perfection but direction, a continual returning to question, What am I fighting that I could instead accept? What am I gripping that I could hold more lightly? What outcome am I demanding that I can instead allow to unfold? In surrendering, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself. You discover that beneath all the striving and controlling and resisting is a deep okayness, a fundamental peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being a certain way. You learn that you can trust life, not because it will always give you what you want, but because you can handle what it gives you. You realize that the strength you were so afraid of losing by surrendering was never real strength at all. It was tension, rigidity, fear dressed up as control. Real strength is flexible, adaptable, open. Real strength knows when to hold on and when to let go. Real strength surrenders. Learning to trust the flow of life. Life has a rhythm, a current, a flow that we can either work with or struggle against, like a river moving toward the sea. Life has a directional energy, a wisdom that operates beneath the surface of our conscious plans and preferences. Learning to trust this flow, to allow ourselves to be carried by it rather than constantly swimming against it, is one of the most profound and challenging lessons we can learn. From early on, we're taught to make life happen, to direct it according to our will, to impose our plans upon it. We're encouraged to set goals, make plans, work hard to achieve what we want. And there's value in this. Intention, effort, and agency matter. But what's often missing from this teaching is the equally important art of receptivity, of listening, of sensing when life is trying to move us in a particular direction, and having the wisdom to cooperate with it rather than insist on our own agenda. The flow of life is what happens when we stop forcing and start allowing, when we stop demanding and start receiving, when we stop micromanaging and start trusting. It's that mysterious way that opportunities appear just when we need them, that doors close to redirect us toward better paths, that seeming disasters turn out to be blessings in disguise. It's the intelligence that knows how to heal your body without your conscious intervention, that grows an entire human from a single cell, that coordinates the impossible complexity of an ecosystem with no central manager. This same intelligence is operating in your life, always, whether you recognize it or not. But most of the time, we're too busy with our own plans to notice it, too attached to our own ideas about how things should unfold to see how things are actually trying to unfold. We're like someone trying to force a river to flow uphill, exhausting ourselves with effort that works against rather than with the natural direction of movement. Trusting the flow doesn't mean being passive or resigned. It doesn't mean you don't make plans or work toward goals or take initiative. It means you hold your plans lightly, stay alert to signs that you might need to adjust course, and remain open to possibilities you hadn't imagined. It means you bring your effort and intention to what you're doing while simultaneously staying responsive to feedback, to changing circumstances, to new information that suggests a different approach might be wiser. Think of a skilled sailor. They have a destination in mind, yes, but they don't try to force the boat. They're in a straight line regardless of wind and current. They work with the wind, even if it's not blowing in exactly the direction they want to go. They adjust their sails constantly, responding to conditions as they change. They know when to move with the current and when to navigate around it. They bring both skill and surrender to the journey, both intention and receptivity. This is what it means to trust the flow while still steering your boat. One of the clearest signs that we're not trusting the flow is the presence of chronic struggle. Not the temporary difficulty of challenging work or growing edges, but the constant feeling of pushing a boulder uphill, of everything being harder than it needs to be, of doors continually closing no matter how hard we knock. Sometimes the struggle is trying to tell us something important, that we're pursuing something that isn't actually aligned with our deepest truth, that we're trying to force a path that isn't meant for us, that life is attempting to redirect us, but we're refusing to listen. Consider the person who keeps trying to make a relationship work that's clearly not working. They exhaust themselves with effort, communicating better, being more understanding, changing themselves to fit what their partner wants. but nothing shifts. The relationship remains strained, unsatisfying, more obligation than joy. This is not the productive struggle of two people growing together through challenges. This is a chronic struggle of trying to force something that doesn't fit, of refusing to acknowledge that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes the flow is trying to carry you apart rather than together, and fighting it only prolongs suffering for both people. Or consider a professional who's been pursuing a particular career path because it's what they've always said they wanted, what they've invested years of education and effort into, what everyone expects of them. But doors keep closing, jobs don't come through, projects fall apart, opportunities evaporate. Meanwhile, something else keeps showing up, a different kind of work, a different direction, something they hadn't planned for, but that keeps presenting itself with surprising ease. This might be the flow trying to redirect them, but they're so attached to their original plan, they keep dismissing these other possibilities as distractions, irrelevant to their real path. Trusting the flow requires developing sensitivity to the difference between resistance that you need to push through and resistance that's information you need to listen to. Some resistance is just fear, inertia, or the discomfort growth. This kind you work through with courage and persistence. But other resistance is life's way of saying, not this way, or not right now, or not quite this. Learning to distinguish between these types of resistance is an art form that develops through experience, self-honesty, and paying attention to patterns. One way to sense the difference is through your body. When you're moving with the flow, even if things are challenging, there's usually an underlying sense of rightness, energy, aliveness. You might be scared or uncertain, but there's also excitement, curiosity, a feeling of expansion. When you're working against a flow, there's often a quality of depletion, constriction, a sense of forcing or fighting. You might be achieving, but at great cost. You might be succeeding by external measures while failing by internal ones. Losing your health, your relationships, your joy, yourself. Trusting the flow also means trusting timing, that mysterious force that brings things together in their own season, not according to our impatience or anxiety. We want what we want when we want it, which is usually now. But life operates on a different schedule, one that accounts for factors we can't see and aren't aware of. The right person comes into your life when you're ready for them, not a moment sooner. The opportunity arrives when you have the maturity to receive it well. The answer becomes clear after you've lived the question deeply enough to understand what you're really asking. This can be incredibly frustrating, especially in a culture that promises instant everything, instant results, instant gratification, instant transformation. But the most meaningful things in life are not instant. They unfold, they develop, they ripen in their own time. Trying to rush them is like pulling on a seedling to make it grow faster. You'll likely kill it rather than help it. There's a story from the Taoist tradition about a farmer whose horse ran away. His neighbor said, "Such bad luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbor said, "Such good luck." The farmer said, "Maybe." The farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg. "Such bad luck," said the neighbors. "Maybe," said the farmer. Then the army came through recruiting young men for war, but they didn't take the farmer's son because of his broken leg. "Such good luck," said the neighbors. "Maybe," said the farmer. This story illustrates the wisdom of trusting that we don't always know whether what's happening is good or bad in the larger context of our lives. What looks like a disaster might be a blessing. What looks like a missed opportunity might be a narrow escape. We simply don't have a vantage point to see how everything connects, how what's happening now might be necessary for what needs to happen later. Trusting the flow means humbling ourselves before this larger perspective, admitting that we don't always know what's best, that our limited viewpoint might not see what life's bigger wisdom sees. This doesn't mean we shouldn't have preferences or make choices or work toward what we want. It means we hold all of it, our desires, our efforts, our disappointments, within a larger context of trust. We do our best and then trust that whatever happens, we'll be able to work with it, learn from it, find our way through it. We release the exhausting burden of needing everything to go according to our plan, and instead become curious about where life might be trying to take us. One of the most beautiful aspects of trusting the flow is that it opens us to serendipity, synchronicity, and grace. Those mysterious moments when the right thing arrives at the right time, when the universe seems to conspire on our behalf, when we feel held by something larger than ourselves. These moments happen more often than we realize, but we only notice them when we're paying attention, when we're not so fixated on our own agenda that we miss the gifts being offered. Synchronicity is that uncanny experience of meaningful coincidence. You think of someone they call, you need specific information, and it arrives through an unexpected source. You're struggling with a decision, and something you overhear from a stranger suddenly clarifies everything. These experiences can't be forced or predicted, but they seem to happen more frequently when we're in a state of openness, when we're trusting the flow rather than trying to control every detail. Learning to trust the flow is also about trusting yourself, your intuition, your inner knowing, your body's wisdom. The flow often speaks to us through intuition, through those inexplicable feelings of yes or no, through sensations in our body, through dreams and daydreams, through what captures our attention and what repels us. But we've been taught to trust logic over intuition, mind over body, external expertise over internal knowing. We become disconnected from our own guidance system, and then we wonder why we feel lost. Reconnecting with your intuition is essential to trusting the flow. Your intuition is how the flow speaks to you personally, how it guides you toward what's yours and away from what isn't. It's not always loud or clear. Often it's subtle, a whisper rather than a shout, a gentle leaning rather than an obvious sign. It requires you to slow down, to get quiet, to pay attention to what you feel beneath what you think, to notice what expands you and what contracts you. Sometimes the flow takes us through experiences we would never choose: loss, failure, heartbreak, disappointment. These are not punishments or mistakes. They're part of the current, part of the journey. Trusting the flow includes trusting these difficult experiences as meaningful, as teaching us something essential, as moving us toward who we need to become even when we can't see it in the moment. It includes trusting that we're strong enough to handle what we're being asked to move through, that we won't be given more than we can bear even when we feel we're at our breaking point. The flow of life is always moving toward growth, healing, and wholeness, even when it takes us through valleys to get there. Like a river that must sometimes ascend into canyons before it can reach the ocean, our lives sometimes need to move through difficulty to reach deeper truths, greater capacities, wider compassion. Trusting this process doesn't make it painless, but it does make it meaningful. It transforms suffering from random cruelty into purposeful initiation, from meaningless struggle into meaningful transformation. To trust the flow is to live with a sense of adventure rather than anxiety about the future. It's to be curious about where life is taking you rather than constantly trying to force it to take you where you think you should go. It's to recognize that you're part of something larger than yourself, held within an intelligence that's been operating since the beginning of time, connected to every other living thing through invisible threads of relationship and reciprocity. You can start practicing this trust in small ways. Notice when you're forcing and experiment with allowing. Pay attention to what flows easily and what requires constant struggle. Follow your curiosity even when it leads in unexpected directions. Say yes to opportunities that excite you even if they weren't in your plan. Listen to your body's signals. Trust your intuitive feelings even when you can't explain them logically. Let go of outcomes and focus on showing up fully to what's in front of you right now. Over time, this practice builds a different kind of confidence. Not confidence that you can control everything, but confidence that you can handle whatever comes, that you're connected to a wisdom larger than your conscious mind, that life is fundamentally for you even when it's difficult. This is a confidence that comes from trusting the flow, and it's unshakable in a way that control-based confidence never can be. Because it doesn't depend on circumstances being a certain way. It depends on your deep knowing that you're exactly where you need to be, learning exactly what you need to learn, becoming exactly who you're meant to become. And that, ultimately, is all any of us can truly ask for. Embracing change with an open heart. Change is the fundamental nature of existence. Everything is always changing. Seasons shift, bodies age, relationships evolve, empires rise and fall, certainties become questions, and what we thought we knew transforms into something we must learn new. Yet despite this constant reality, we resist change as if it were an aberration, a disruption to some stable state that we believe we're supposed to maintain. We spend enormous energy trying to keep things the same, to preserve what is, to prevent the inevitable evolution of everything we touch and everything that touches us. This resistance to change is one of our deepest sources of suffering. We cling to youth in a body that's designed to age. We grip tightly to relationships in their early stage euphoria, devastated when they mature into something more complex. We insist that our children stay small even as they're biologically programmed to grow and individuate. We want our careers to be stable even in industries that are fundamentally unstable. We expect ourselves to think and feel the same way at 40 as we did at 20, trouble when our values shift and what once mattered stops mattering. But what if change isn't the enemy? What if our resistance to it is the problem, not change itself? What if embracing change with an open heart, really embracing it, not just tolerating it or resigning ourselves to it, could transform our entire experience of being alive? An open heart is soft where fear is rigid, receptive where resistance is closed, curious where anxiety is defensive. An open heart doesn't harden itself against pain or disappointment. It feels everything and remains tender anyway. An open heart doesn't protect itself through cynicism or detachment. It stays vulnerable, available, present. An open heart knows that to love anything, a person, a place, a moment, a version of yourself, means eventually releasing it or watching it transform into something else. And it loves anyway fully, without holding back out of fear of loss. Embracing change with an open heart begins with accepting that impermanence is not a flaw in the design of life, but the design itself. Everything that exists is temporary. Your body, your thoughts, your relationships, your circumstances, your problems, your joys, your identity, all of it is in flux, has always been in flux, will always be in flux. This isn't pessimism, it's reality. And there's something deeply liberating about accepting it. When you accept impermanence, you stop taking things for granted. You appreciate what you have while you have it, knowing it won't last forever. You savor the moment because you know this exact constellation of factors, this light, this feeling, this person's presence, this capacity of your body, this clarity of your mind, will never exist in quite this way again. Impermanence doesn't diminish the value of experiences. It intensifies them. It's precisely because things don't last that they're precious. Consider how you experience a sunset. Part of its beauty is that it's fleeting. If the sky stayed that exact shade of orange-pink forever, it would cease to move you. It's beautiful partly because it's changing, because you're watching something transform before your eyes, because you know that in minutes it will be gone. Your life is the same way. Beautiful partly because it's brief, meaningful partly because it won't last, valuable partly because it's unique and unrepeatable. Yet we spend so much energy pretending things will stay the same. We make plans as if we can predict the future. We promise forever as if we have control over time. We invest in permanence in a fundamentally impermanent world. And then we're shocked, devastated, betrayed when change arrives, as if it wasn't always going to arrive, as if anything has ever stayed the same, as if it were somehow going to be the exception to the rule of impermanence. Embracing change with an open heart means greeting each transition, wanted or unwanted, chosen or imposed, as an opportunity rather than a threat. Every change brings an ending, yes, but also a beginning. Every loss opens space for something new. Every death is also a birth. This doesn't minimize the pain of difficult transitions. It contextualizes them within a larger cycle of transformation that gives them meaning. Think about the most significant changes in your life. At the time they were happening, many of them probably felt terrible, devastating, unfair, wrong. Relationships ending, jobs lost, plans falling apart, identities dissolving. But looking back now, can you see how some of those painful endings were also openings? How closing one door allowed another to open? How who you had to become to navigate those changes made you more of who you truly are? This doesn't mean all change is good or that everything happens for a reason in some predetermined plan. Some changes are genuinely tragic, losses that leave permanent scars. But even in these, if we can eventually open our hearts to the transformation, we often find unexpected gifts, deeper compassion, greater resilience, wider perspective, more authentic priorities. We discover capacities we didn't know we had. We find out what we're actually made of. We learn what truly matters. Embracing change with an open heart also means being willing to change yourself, your beliefs, your behaviors, your identity. This might be the hardest kind of change to embrace because we're invested in a story about who we are. We develop a self-concept, and then we defend it, even when it no longer fits, even when it limits us, even when it causes suffering for us and others. But you're not who you were 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even who you were last year. You've had new experiences, learned new things, been hurt in new ways, loved new people, seen more of the world and more of yourself. How could you possibly be the same? Insisting on remaining the same person when life is constantly inviting you to evolve is like wearing clothes from childhood that no longer fit. Uncomfortable, restrictive, absurd. Being willing to change yourself, to outgrow who you've been, requires courage because it means disappointing people who are invested in your old version. It means saying, I used to think this way, but I don't anymore. It means admitting you were wrong, that you've learned something, that you're different now. In a culture that values consistency and punishes changing your mind, this can feel dangerous, but it's essential for growth. The opinions you held at 20 should not be the opinions you hold at 40 if you've actually been paying attention to life. An open heart toward change also involves being willing to not know what's coming next, to step forward without certainty, to begin new chapters when you haven't finished processing the old ones. Life doesn't wait for us to feel ready for the next change. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't give us time to fully adjust to one transition before initiating another. Being willing to move forward in uncertainty, to say yes to what emerging even when you don't know where it will lead, is an act of profound courage and faith. There's a particular kind of change that's especially challenging. The slow, gradual change that we don't notice day to day, but that accumulates into something significant. The way a marriage slowly becomes more roommate than romance. The way a career that once inspired you slowly becomes just a job. The way your body slowly changes with age. The way distance slowly grows in a once close friendship. These slow changes are harder to address because they're harder to pinpoint. There's no crisis moment, no clear break, just a gradual drift from what was to what is. Embracing these slow changes with an open heart means staying aware, checking in regularly with yourself and your life, noticing when things feel different, and being willing to acknowledge it rather than ignoring it. It means having honest conversations when relationships shift. It means being willing to make changes before crisis forces you to. It means honoring the truth of what is rather than pretending things are still what they used to be. Sometimes embracing change with an open heart looks like actively choosing change before life forces upon you. This is perhaps the most empowered relationship with change, not just accepting the changes that happen to you, but initiating change when you sense it's needed, leaving a situation that's no longer right for you, even when it's comfortable, ending a chapter before you're pushed out of it, choosing growth over security. This kind of change requires you to trust yourself more than you trust the illusion of stability. It's important to acknowledge that having an open heart doesn't mean being indiscriminately open to everything. Boundaries are essential. Not all change is change you should embrace. Sometimes the loving, wise, open-hearted response is to resist certain changes, to say no, to fight against what's trying to happen. An open heart has discernment. It can distinguish between change that align with growth and change that's aligned with harm. It can feel the difference between transformation and violation. The practice of embracing change with an open heart is not about being passive or resigned. It's about being responsive rather than reactive, adaptive rather than rigid, curious rather than defensive. It's about meeting change with presence rather than panic, with awareness rather than avoidance, with flexibility rather than force. One of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself when facing change is, what is this change asking me to become? Not just what is it taking from me, but what is it inviting me into? What new capacities might I need to develop? What old patterns might need to dissolve? What aspects of myself might get to emerge that couldn't in my previous circumstances? Every change, even difficult ones, is an invitation to become more fully yourself. Not the self you've been conditioned to be, not the self others expect you to be, but the self that's most authentic, most aligned, most true. Change strips away what's superficial and reveals what's essential. It forces you to figure out what you really value, what you really need, who you really are beneath all the identities and roles and stories you've been carrying. Embracing change with an open heart ultimately means trusting that you're resilient enough to handle whatever comes. Not that it won't be hard, not that you won't grieve or struggle or feel temporarily broken, but that you have within you what it takes to eventually integrate the change, to find your footing in the new landscape, to reconstruct meaning and purpose in the altered circumstances of your life. You've already survived every difficult change you've faced so far. You've already adapted, adjusted, found a way through. This track record suggests you'll do it again and again and again until you can't anymore. And at that point, embracing change means embracing the ultimate change, the final letting go, with the same open heart you practice throughout your life. The alternative to embracing change with an open heart is living in constant fear, constantly bracing against the inevitable, constantly grieving what was instead of engaging with what is, constantly exhausted by the effort trying to stop the river from flowing. That's not living. That's slowly dying while still breathing. An open heart is the only way to truly live, to be present with what is, grateful for what was, and available for what's coming, knowing that all of it, every single moment, is the precious, fleeting, utterly irreplaceable gift of your one beautiful, ever-changing life. Freeing yourself from emotional weight. Imagine carrying a backpack everywhere you go. In this backpack, you've stored years of unprocessed emotions, old angers you never expressed, griefs you never fully felt, fears you tried to ignore, shames you buried deep, guilts that gnaw at you in quiet moments, resentments you've been feeding for decades. With each step of your journey, this backpack grows heavier. It weighs you down, slows your movement, makes every climb more exhausting. You've carried it so long you've almost forgotten it's there, almost normalized the constant strain on your shoulders, the way you have to compensate for its weight with every move you make. This backpack is emotional weight, and most of us are carrying far more of it than we realize. We think we've dealt with our past because we stopped thinking about it. But not thinking about something is not the same as processing it, releasing it, freeing ourselves from its burden. Unprocessed emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They go underground, shaping our reactions, limiting our openness, creating patterns we repeat without awareness, sabotaging our peace in ways we don't connect back to their source. Freeing yourself from emotional weight is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice of acknowledging, feeling, processing, and releasing the emotions you've been carrying. It's learning to complete the emotional cycles that got interrupted, to finally feel what you weren't safe to feel at the time, to give yourself permission for the anger, the grief, the fear, the pain that you've been denying or minimizing or pushing away. We carry emotional weight for many reasons. Sometimes we weren't allowed to express certain emotions as children. Anger was punished, sadness was weakness, fear was shameful. So we learned to suppress what we felt, to smile when we wanted to scream, to be fine when we were breaking. These suppressed emotions didn't go away. They got stored in our bodies, creating tension, illness, chronic pain, anxiety, depression. Sometimes we carry emotional weight because we never had the space or support to process significant experiences. Traumas, losses, betrayals, disappointments. These need time, attention, and often companionship to move through completely. But life keeps moving. Responsibilities don't pause. And we tell ourselves we need to just get over it, move on, be strong. So we pack the pain into that backpack and keep walking, not realizing we're taking it with us everywhere. Sometimes we carry emotional weight because we're afraid of what we'll find if we look too closely at what we're feeling. We're afraid of being overwhelmed, of falling apart, of discovering we're angrier or sadder or more damaged than we want to admit. So we keep the backpack sealed, never fully unpacking it, living with its weight rather than risking the vulnerability of examining its contents. But here's what's true. Emotions are meant to move through us, not to take up permanent residence. The word emotion comes from the Latin emovere, meaning to move out, to move through. Emotions are motion, energy that needs to flow. When we block that flow, when we dam the river, pressure builds. That pressure expresses itself in countless ways. Physical symptoms, relationship problems, addictions, compulsive behaviors, chronic anxiety or depression, explosive reactions to minor triggers, numbness and disconnection from life. Freeing yourself from emotional weight begins with the radical act of acknowledgement. You have to be willing to admit what you're carrying, to take inventory of the backpack's contents. This requires honest self-reflection. What am I still angry about? What have I never fully grieved? What am I afraid of that I've been pretending doesn't scare me? What shame am I carrying that makes me feel fundamentally flawed? What guilt do I use to punish myself, keeping wounds open that could heal? This acknowledgement is not about wallowing or self-pity. It's about bringing what's been hidden in darkness into the light of consciousness. It's about ending the exhausting pretense that you're fine when you're not, that the past is past when it's still very much present, that you've dealt with things you've actually just been avoiding. There's tremendous relief in simply admitting the truth of what you feel, even if it's messy or unflattering or complicated. Once you acknowledge what you're carrying, the next step is allowing yourself to actually feel it. This is where most of us get stuck. We think that feeling our difficult emotions will destroy us, that sadness will become depression we can't climb out of, that anger will make us violent or destructive, that fear will paralyze us. But the opposite is usually true. It's the unfelt emotions that damage us, not the felt ones. Emotions that are fully felt, allowed to move through us completely, tend to naturally resolve and release. Feeling your emotions fully doesn't mean acting on them without discernment or making decisions while in their grip. It means giving them space in your body and awareness, letting them have their say, listening to their message. Anger might need you to punch pillows or scream in your car or write letters you don't send. Grief might need you to sob until your body is empty, to look at photos, to speak out loud to someone who's gone. Fear might need you to shake and tremble, to name what scares you, to be held or comforted. Shame might need you to speak it to someone safe who won't judge you, to expose it to the light where it can't survive. Many of us need support in this process. There's no shame in that. Processing deep emotional weight often requires the presence of a skilled therapist, a trusted friend, a support group, someone who can witness your feelings without trying to fix them or make them go away, someone who can remind you that you're safe even when the feelings are intense. We weren't meant to do this alone. We're social beings, and healing often happens in relationship, in the experience of being truly seen and still loved, still accepted, still valued despite or because of our vulnerability. One of the most important understandings in freeing yourself from emotional weight is that feeling something doesn't make it true or permanent. You can feel rage without being a violent person. You can feel despair without being clinically depressed. You can feel terror without being in actual danger. Emotions are information, not identity. They're weather passing through, not climate. They're visitors, not permanent residents. When you understand this, you become less afraid of your own feelings. You can let them come, let them be, let them go. Freeing yourself from emotional weight also involves examining the stories you've been telling yourself about your experiences. We don't just carry emotions, we carry narratives, interpretations of what happened and what it meant about us, about others, about life. Many of these narratives are inaccurate, overly harsh, or based on limited perspectives we had at the time, but have never revisited with adult understanding. The story that you're fundamentally unlovable because someone left you. The story that you're a failure because something you attempted didn't work out. The story that you can't trust anyone because you were betrayed. The story that you don't deserve happiness because of something you did or didn't do. These stories create emotional weight that compounds over time, coloring everything that comes after with their particular shade of pain. Examining these stories with curiosity and compassion can reveal that they're often not as true as you believed. Maybe that person left not because you're unlovable, but because they were dealing with their own unresolved issues. Maybe that failure taught you something essential that contributed to later successes. Maybe trust is something you can learn to offer again with appropriate boundaries and discernment. Maybe you deserve happiness regardless of your mistakes, because deserving is not something you earn or lose, but something inherent to being human. Rewriting your stories doesn't mean denying what happened or pretending it wasn't painful. It means refusing to let painful events define you in ways that limit your future. It means finding more empowering interpretations that honor your worth and possibilities. It means reclaiming authority over your own narrative rather than letting old pain write your script. Another crucial aspect of freeing yourself from emotional weight is forgiveness. And I mean that in the fullest, most challenging sense. Forgiveness of others who hurt you, yes, but also forgiveness of yourself for your own mistakes, your own participation in painful situations, your own humanness. So much of the weight we carry is tied to unforgiveness. We keep score, we rehearse grievances, we justify our anger, we cling to victimhood or guilt, as if letting go would mean condoning what happened or absolving ourselves when we don't feel we deserve absolution. But forgiveness is not about the other person or even about what happened. It's about freeing yourself from the exhaustion of carrying that weight. It's about recognizing that holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It's about understanding that forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation or forgetting or pretending something was okay. It means releasing the charge, softening the grip, choosing your peace over your pain. Forgiving yourself is often harder than forgiving others. We hold ourselves to impossible standards, judging our past selves with our current knowledge, punishing ourselves endlessly for mistakes we made when we were doing the best we could with what we knew at the time. But you cannot hate yourself into becoming a better person. You cannot shame yourself into healing. You cannot punish yourself enough to make up for anything. The weight of self-unforgiveness is perhaps the heaviest burden of all, and it serves absolutely no one. Not you, not the people you hurt, not the world that needs your gifts. Freeing yourself from emotional weight is also about learning to set boundaries that prevent you from accumulating new weight. This means not taking on other people's emotions as your own, not feeling responsible for fixing everyone's problems, not absorbing blame that doesn't belong to you, not staying in situations that consistently violate your well-being. It means recognizing that you can have compassion for someone without carrying their burdens, that you can be loving without being endlessly available, that you can care without sacrificing yourself. Many of us were taught that selflessness is a virtue, that putting others first is what good people do, that our own needs matter less than everyone else's. But this is a recipe for emotional exhaustion and accumulated resentment. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot give what you don't have. Learning to say no, to protect your energy, to honor your limits, to take care of yourself first is not selfish. It's essential. It's the difference between sustainable compassion and martyrdom, between genuine generosity and people-pleasing. As you begin to free yourself from emotional weight, you'll notice changes. You'll have more energy, not because your circumstances have changed, but because you're not using all your resources to carry and suppress old pain. You'll have more presence, not because you've eliminated stress, but because you're not half living in past hurts or future fears. You'll have more authenticity, not because you become perfect, but because you're no longer expending energy maintaining false versions of yourself. You'll also notice that your relationships shift. When you're not carrying so much unprocessed emotion, you're less reactive, less defensive, less likely to project past hurts onto present people. You can see others more clearly, respond to what's actually happening rather than to what happened before with someone else. You can be more generous, more patient, more truly loving because you're not constantly triggered by your own unhealed wounds. The work of freeing yourself from emotional weight is not linear. Some days you'll feel lighter, clearer, more free. Other days old weights will resurface. Memories will ambush you. Feelings you thought you'd process will come back around. This doesn't mean you're failing or regressing. Healing happens in layers and cycles. Each time you work with a particular pain, you tend to go deeper, understanding and releasing more. Trust the process, even when it feels messy. One of the greatest gifts of freeing yourself from emotional weight is that it creates space. Space for joy, for creativity, for new experiences, for presence, for love. When you're not using all your internal resources to manage old pain, you have capacity for new aliveness. When you're not viewing everything through the lens of past hurts, you can see possibilities you couldn't see before. When your heart isn't armored against old wounds, it can open to new connections, new beauty, new meaning. Imagine that backpack becoming lighter, not all at once, but gradually. As you unpack it piece by piece, feeling what needs to be felt, releasing what needs to be released, forgiving what needs to be forgiven. Imagine walking through life without that constant weight. Your shoulders relaxed, your step lighter, your breathing deeper. Imagine the energy you've been using to carry old pain becoming available for creating new life. This is what's possible when you commit to freeing yourself from emotional weight. Not a life without pain. That's not realistic or even desirable, but a life where pain moves through you rather than getting stuck in you, where you process rather than accumulate, where you feel fully and then let go fully, where emotional weight is temporary rather than permanent, where you travel light. The courage to release control. Control is the illusion we most desperately cling to. We organize our lives around the belief that if we just plan well enough, work hard enough, prepare thoroughly enough, we can control outcomes, guarantee safety, prevent loss and pain. We create elaborate systems, rules, and routines designed to give us a sense of mastery over the inherent uncertainty and vulnerability of existence. And when things don't go according to plan, which is often, we blame ourselves for not controlling better, for missing some variable we should have accounted for failing at the impossible task we assigned ourselves. The need for control is born from fear. We're afraid of what might happen if we're not constantly managing, monitoring, directing, protecting. We're afraid of our own helplessness in the face of forces beyond our influence. We're afraid of the chaos that seems to lurk just beneath the surface of our carefully ordered lives. So we grip tighter, plan more, worry harder, believing that our vigilance is what's keeping disaster at bay, that the moment we let go is the moment everything will fall apart. But here's the uncomfortable truth. We never had as much control as we thought we did. Most of what happens in our lives and in the world is beyond our control and always has been. The control we think we're exercising is often just a comfortable story we tell ourselves, a psychological defense against the terror of acknowledging how little we actually determine. And the energy we expend to try to control what can't be controlled is energy we could be using to actually live, to respond skillfully to what is, to create and connect and experience the beauty of this brief existence. Releasing control doesn't mean being passive or irresponsible. It doesn't mean not planning, not preparing, not trying to create good outcomes. It means recognizing the difference between influence and control, between doing your best and guaranteeing results, between taking responsibility for your choices, and believing you're responsible for everything that happens. It means focusing your energy where it can actually make a difference, on your own actions, attitudes, and responses, and releasing the exhausting burden of trying to control everything else. Think about parenting. Parents, especially of young children, naturally want to protect their kids from all harm, to control their environment to keep them safe. This is healthy and necessary to a degree. You child-proof the house. You hold their hand crossing the street. You monitor what they're exposed to. But as children grow, appropriate parenting requires gradually releasing control, allowing them to take age-appropriate risks, to make their own mistakes, to develop their own judgment. Parents who can't release control, who hover and micromanage and prevent their children from experiencing any difficulty or failure, often raise children who struggle with independence, who doubt their own capabilities, who either rebel dramatically or remain emotionally dependent well into adulthood. The same dynamic plays out in other areas of life. The manager who can't delegate because they need to control every detail creates bottlenecks and prevents their team from developing. The partner who tries to control their significant other's choices, friendships, or behaviors creates resentment and often drives away the very person they're trying to hold on to. The perfectionist who tries to control every variable of a project often misses deadlines and alienates collaborators with their rigidity. Control is often confused with care. I'm doing this because I care. We tell ourselves as we try to manage someone else's life, solve their problems, prevent them from making choices we think are wrong. But care and control are different. Care respects agency. Control denies it. Care offers support. Control imposes will. Care trusts. Control fears. You can deeply care about someone and still release control. Still allow them their own path, their own mistakes, their own growth, their own life. Releasing control requires trust. Trust that other people can handle their own lives. Trust that you can handle whatever comes. Trust that there's an intelligence in how things unfold that's larger than your personal preferences or plans. This trust is not naive or passive. It's an active choice to believe in resilience, yours and others, and to recognize that overcoming challenges is often how we develop capabilities. That struggle is sometimes necessary for growth. That protecting people from all difficulty is not actually loving or helpful. One of the most profound shifts in consciousness is moving from how can I control this to how can I respond to this? The first question assumes control is possible and desirable. The second question acknowledges reality as it is and focuses on what you can actually influence, your own response. This shift is enormously liberating. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to make reality conform to your preferences, you can work skillfully with reality as it actually is. Consider someone facing a serious illness. They can't control whether they have the illness, can't control many aspects of how their body responds to treatment, can't guarantee the outcome no matter how perfectly they follow medical advice. But they can control their response, how they relate to their illness, what they do with their remaining time or energy, how they communicate with loved ones, whether they bring curiosity and openness to the experience or only resistance and despair. The second path doesn't guarantee physical healing, but profoundly affects the quality of the experience and often supports better outcomes than constant stress and control seeking. Releasing control also means accepting that you can't control how others perceive you, judge you, feel about you. This is one of the most liberating and terrifying releases. So much of our controlling behavior is aimed at managing others' perceptions, performing the version of ourselves we think will be most acceptable, hiding parts of ourselves we fear will be judged, people-pleasing to ensure we're liked. But no amount of control can make everyone like you understand you or see you the way you want to be seen. People will misunderstand you. Some won't like you no matter what you do. Others' opinions of you are based more on their own filters, experiences, and needs than on who you actually are. When you release the futile attempt to control others' perceptions, you free yourself to be authentic. You can stop performing and start being. You can make choices based on your own values rather than others' judgments. You can accept that disappointing some people is inevitable, and that's okay, that you're not responsible for managing everyone's comfort with your choices. This doesn't mean being inconsiderate or unnecessarily provocative. It means living from your own center rather than constantly adjusting yourself to meet external expectations. The courage to release control is especially tested in intimate relationships. Love makes us vulnerable, and vulnerability makes us want control. We want to control whether the other person stays or leaves, loves us or stops loving us, meets our needs or disappoints us. We want to control their growth so it aligns with ours, their choices so they don't threaten our security, their feelings so we don't have to experience our own fears of abandonment or inadequacy. But true intimacy is impossible without releasing control. Love requires allowing the other person to be who they are, to make their own choices, to have their own feelings and experiences, to grow in their own direction even if it takes them away from you. This is terrifying because it means facing the fundamental insecurity of love, that is always a risk, always uncertain, always dependent on the free choice of another person who might choose differently tomorrow. But it's also the only way love can be real. Controlled love isn't love. It's possession, manipulation, transaction. Releasing control in relationships means having conversations instead of ultimatums, making requests instead of demands, expressing your needs without making the other person responsible for meeting them, accepting influence while maintaining your own agency. It means being willing to be affected by your partner while not trying to control how they affect you. It means trusting that if the relationship is right, it will endure without your constant management. And if it's not right, no amount of control will make it work. Another area where releasing control is both essential and difficult is around outcomes of our work or creative efforts. You can control your effort, your practice, your dedication, your willingness to improve. You can't control whether your work is recognized, rewarded, appreciated, successful by external measures. You can't control the market, the timing, the luck, the thousands of variables that determine whether your offering finds its audience. Many talented people burn out or give up not because they fail to do good work, but because they expected their hard work to guarantee specific results. And when those results didn't materialize, they felt like failures. Releasing control of outcomes doesn't mean not caring about results or not striving for excellence. It means decoupling your sense of worth and success from external validation, finding satisfaction in the work itself, trusting that if you keep creating, keep showing up, keep offering your gifts, they'll find their way to the people who need them in their own time. It means redefining success as doing what you can rather than achieving what you hope. There's a prayer often attributed to Reinhold Niebuhr that captures this wisdom. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. This is essentially a teaching about releasing control. The serenity comes from acceptance, releasing control of what you can't influence. The courage comes from action, claiming your agency where you do have influence. The wisdom comes from discernment, knowing which is which. Most of what we try to control falls into the cannot change category. Other people's choices, feelings, and perceptions. The past, the future, whether we get sick or injured, whether people love us, whether our plans work out exactly as we envision, whether we avoid pain and loss. When we die, the list of what we can't control is vast. The list of what we can control is small. Our own choices in this present moment, our response to circumstances, our attitude, what we give our attention to, how we treat others, whether we align our actions with our values. When you focus your energy on that small list of what you can actually control, rather than dissipate it on the vast list of what you can't, your life transforms. You become more effective because you're working with reality rather than against it. You become less anxious because you're not carrying the impossible burden of controlling the uncontrollable. You become more present because you're not constantly projecting into a future you're trying to dictate. You become more peaceful because you're not in constant battle with how things are. Releasing control is not a one-time decision, but a practice, a constant returning to what's actually yours to manage and releasing everything else. It's noticing when you're gripping, when you're trying to force, when you're insisting rather than allowing, when you're managing rather than trusting. It's catching yourself mid-attempt to control and choosing differently, to breathe, to allow, to trust, to release. This practice is countercultural. We live in a time that worships control. Control your schedule, your diet, your body, your emotions, your image, your outcomes, your life. We're sold products and programs promising us more control, better control, ultimate control. But this promise is a lie that makes us anxious, exhausted, and disconnected from the natural flow of life that requires responsiveness more than control, adaptability more than force, trust more than domination. The courage to release control is the courage to be human rather than trying to be a god. It's accepting that you're finite, limited, not omniscient or omnipotent. It's humbling yourself before the vastness of all you cannot know, cannot predict, cannot prevent, cannot guarantee. But in this humility is freedom. Freedom from exhausting pretense of control. Freedom to be authentic rather than perfect. Freedom to try things even when you can't control the outcome. Freedom to love even when you can't control whether you'll be loved back. Freedom to live even when you can't control how long you have or how it will end. When you release control, you don't lose power. You reclaim it. You stop wasting it on battles you can't win and focus it where it matters. On becoming who you want to be, on treating people the way you want to treat them, on creating what you feel called to create, on responding to life with wisdom, courage, and grace. This is the only power that was ever really yours anyway. And it's enough. More than enough. It's everything. Finding strength and acceptance. Acceptance is one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal growth and spiritual practice. Many people confuse acceptance with resignation, passivity, or giving up. They think acceptance means tolerating mistreatment, staying in bad situations, or pretending everything is fine when it's not. But true acceptance is none of these things. Acceptance is a fierce, clear-eyed recognition of reality as it is, not as you wish it were, not as it used to be, not as it should be, but exactly as it is in this moment. And within that recognition is a profound strength, a power that comes not from resistance, but from alignment with truth. When you resist reality, when you argue with what is, when you waste energy wishing things were different, when you exhaust yourself fighting battles that have already been lost, you create suffering on top of pain. The pain is what life brings. The suffering is what resistance adds. Acceptance removes that additional layer of suffering. It doesn't eliminate the pain of difficult circumstances, but it stops you from making that pain worse through denial, avoidance, or futile struggle against what cannot be changed. Think of a diagnosis of a chronic condition. The condition itself will bring challenges, Pain, limitations, lifestyle changes, medical interventions. This is a pain. But on top of that pain, you could add layers of suffering. Why me? This isn't fair. My life is ruined. I can't accept this. I refuse to live this way. I have to fix this immediately. None of this should be happening. This suffering doesn't change the diagnosis, but it dramatically worsens your experience of it and your ability to respond to it effectively. Now imagine a different response. Acceptance. I have this condition. This is now part of my reality. I didn't choose it, but it's here. What do I need to do to live well with it? What can I learn from it? How can I adapt? This acceptance doesn't mean giving up on treatment or improvement. It means starting from reality rather than from resistance, which allows for more creative, effective responses. It means not wasting precious energy on the unanswerable why me, and instead channeling that energy into the answerable what now. Acceptance is a foundation of all effective action. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. You cannot work skillfully with a situation you're busy denying or resisting. Acceptance allows you to see clearly, to assess honestly, to respond wisely. It's not the end of effort. It's the beginning of effective effort. It's not surrender in the sense of defeat. It's surrender in the sense of stopping the fight with reality, so you can instead engage skillfully with reality. There's a Zen teaching that goes, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. This isn't about passivity. It's about trust in natural processes, about not interfere with what naturally unfolds, about the wisdom of non-forcing. There are times in life when the most powerful thing you can do is accept rather than act, allow rather than push, trust rather than control. This takes enormous strength because it goes against everything our culture teaches us about always doing more, trying harder, forcing outcomes. Finding strength and acceptance often begins with accepting yourself, all of you, not just the parts you're proud of or that meet others' approval. Accepting your body as it is, not as you wish it were, or as it used to be, or as society says it should be. Accepting your limitations, your struggles, your mistakes, your humanness. Accepting your feelings, even the ones you judge as wrong or weak or inappropriate. Accepting your history, your family of origin, your mistakes, your regrets. This self-acceptance is not the same as self-improvement or self-compassion, though it's related to both. It's a foundational acknowledgement. This is who and what I am right now. All of it, the beautiful and the broken, the strong and the struggling, the light and the shadow. You cannot authentically change or grow from a foundation of self-rejection. Self-rejection says, I'm not okay as I am. I'm only acceptable if I become different. This creates constant striving, constant anxiety, constant sense of not enoughness. Even if you achieve what you're striving for, the underlying belief that you're not okay as you are remains, and you'll just find new ways you need to be different. Self-acceptance says, I'm fundamentally okay, right now as I am, and from this foundation of okayness, I can grow, change, improve, not because I'm not acceptable as I am, but because growth is natural, because I'm curious about my potential, because change is interesting. This is a completely different energy. Change from self-acceptance is sustainable, gentle, rooted in self-love rather than self-criticism. Paradoxically, accepting yourself as you are is often what allows real transformation to happen, because you're not constantly fighting yourself, not divided against yourself, not using all your energy to maintain an acceptable facade. Acceptance also involves accepting what you cannot change about other people. This is perhaps one of the hardest acceptances we face. We want the people we love to change in ways we think will make them happier, healthier, more successful, more available to us. We see their potential and want them to fulfill it. We see their self-destructive patterns and want to rescue them. We see how they could be and struggle to accept how they actually are. But people change in their own time, according to their own readiness, or sometimes not at all. your acceptance, your approval, your love, your efforts to help. None of these can make someone change if they're not ready or don't want to. Accepting this is freeing. It releases you from the exhausting, often damaging pattern of trying to fix, change, or save other people. It allows you to love them as they are, not as projects to be improved. It allows them to be responsible for their own lives while you're responsible for yours. This doesn't mean you don't ever offer feedback, support, or accountability to people you care about. It means you offer these things knowing the other person gets to choose what they do with them, that their choices are ultimately theirs to make, that your role is not to control their path, but to be a loving presence on it. It means distinguishing between supporting someone's growth and taking responsibility for their growth, between caring about their well-being and being responsible for their well-being. Acceptance is also crucial when dealing with the past. What happened, happened. You cannot change it, redo it, or undo it. The only variable you have any control over is your relationship to it, how you think about it, what meaning you make of it, how much power you give to define your present and future. So many people are imprisoned by their past, replaying it endlessly, imagining alternate scenarios, stuck in if only and should have. This is resistance to what was, and it keeps you living the past rather than in the present where your actual life is happening. Accepting the past doesn't mean you think what happened was okay, especially if it involved harm to you or others. It means you acknowledge that it happened, that it's over, that continuing to fight with the fact it only hurts you now. It means you grieve what needs to be grieved, extract whatever lessons are there to be learned, and then release the past power to control your present. It means you stop letting what happened then determine what happens now. There's a Buddhist practice called radical acceptance that involves accepting everything about this moment completely, without judgment, without wanting it to be different. Not just accepting what seems acceptable, but accepting everything. Your pain, your fear, your anger, your inadequacy, your circumstances, all of it. This complete acceptance sounds impossible at first, maybe even undesirable. Why would you accept what's painful or wrong? But in practice, radical acceptance is incredibly powerful. It doesn't mean you like what's happening or approve of it or stop working to change what could be changed. It means you stop adding resistance to reality. Stop creating suffering on top of pain. It's a moment of complete surrender to what is, which paradoxically creates spaciousness, clarity, and often unexpected shifts. When you stop fighting reality, you can see it more clearly, respond to it more wisely, and access resources that were unavailable while you were busy resisting. Finding strength and acceptance also involves accepting uncertainty and impermanence. Life offers no guarantees. Things change constantly. People leave. Bodies age. Circumstances shift. Plans don't work out. Acceptance of these fundamental truths doesn't make them less painful when they happen, but it does prevent the additional suffering of being shocked, bitter, or devastated by the simple fact that life is uncertain and impermanent. When you accept uncertainty as a constant rather than an aberration, you can relax your grip, take risks, try things without needing to know how they'll turn out, be present with what is rather than constantly anxious about what might be. When you accept impermanence, you can appreciate what you have while you have it without taking it for granted, knowing that everything is temporary and therefore precious. The strength and acceptance is not the strength of hardness or invulnerability. It's the strength of flexibility, of resilience, of inner stability that doesn't depend on circumstances being a certain way. It's the strength of a tree that bends in strong winds rather than breaking, that adapts to seasons rather than resisting them, that grows around obstacles rather than refusing to grow because obstacles are in the way. Acceptance builds psychological and emotional resilience. When you accept that difficulty is part of life, that pain will come, that loss is inevitable, you're not shattered when these things happen. You're not shocked or indignant or asking, why me? You're equipped. You know this is part of the human experience, part of your experience, and you trust yourself to handle it. Not, perfectly, not without struggle, but adequately. This trust is enormously stabilizing. Perhaps the deepest acceptance is acceptance of your own death, of your mortality, of the fact that this life you're living is temporary. Most of us live in denial of death, pushing away, not thinking about it, pretending we have endless time. But accepting death, really accepting it, not just intellectually acknowledging it, transforms how you live. It clarifies what matters. It motivates you to stop postponing your life. It helps you let go of petty concerns and focus on what's genuinely important. It makes you grateful for each day, each person, each experience, knowing that none of it is guaranteed, that all of it could end at any moment. This acceptance of death is not morbid. It's liberating. It's what allows you to truly live, to take risks, to love fully, to create boldly, to be present rather than always living for some future time when you imagine you'll finally start really living. Accepting death paradoxically intensifies life, makes it more vivid, more meaningful, more urgent in the best possible way. Acceptance is not one dramatic moment of surrender. It's a practice you return to again and again. Life will constantly present you with realities you don't want, didn't choose, wish were different. Each time you get to choose, resist or accept, fight with what is or work with what is, add suffering to pain or meet pain with presence. Waste energy on unchangeable past or focus energy on present and future. The more you practice acceptance, the more natural it becomes, the more you discover the peace and power that live within it. You learn that acceptance doesn't diminish you. It dignifies you. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you flexible, which is a subtle and sophisticated form of strength. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care effectively, focusing your care where it can actually make a difference. In acceptance, you find your true power, not the pseudo-power, denial, control, and resistance, but the real power of clear-seeing, wise response, and deep peace. This is a strength that allows you to weather any storm, to find your center in any chaos, to remain yourself regardless of circumstances. This is a strength that comes not from controlling life, but from embracing it completely, exactly as it is, and trusting yourself to be okay with whatever comes. And you will be not always happy, not always comfortable, not always getting what you want, but okay, fundamentally, deeply okay. And from that okayness, from that radical acceptance, everything becomes possible, allowing the past to pass. There is a particular weight that only the past can carry, not the physical heaviness of objects we can hold, but the invisible burden of moments that have already dissolved into yesterday. We carry this weight not in our hands, but in the corridors of our minds, in the chambers of our hearts, in the very posture of our souls. It is the weight of what was, what might have been, what we wish had unfolded differently. And yet, for all its invisibility, this burden shapes how we walk through the world, how we meet each new morning, how we hold ourselves in the presence of possibility. To allow the past to pass is not to deny its existence or diminish its significance. The past has made us who we are. It has carved valleys of wisdom into our understanding, built mountains of resilience in our character, and painted the complex landscape of our identity with every shade of experience. The question is not whether the past matters, but rather how we choose to relate to it. Do we clutch it so tightly that our hands cannot open to receive what comes next? Do we replay it so endlessly that we cannot hear the music of the present moment? Do we build our home so completely in yesterday that we forget we are still alive today? There's a profound difference between remembering and remaining. We can remember without taking up residence in memory. We can honor what was without insisting that it continue to be. This distinction lies at the heart of allowing the past to pass, the recognition that we are not betraying our history by releasing our grip on it, but rather fulfilling our responsibility to the life that continues to unfold before us. Consider the river, which knows something essential about the nature of time and existence. The river does not resist the water that has already flowed past. It does not try to hold yesterday's rain or last season's snowmelt in place, desperately attempting to keep what was from becoming what is no longer. Instead, the river understands its purpose: to provide a channel through which water moves, always arriving, always departing, always in the sacred process of becoming something new as it travels toward the sea. The river's wisdom lies in its willingness to let go, moment by moment, of everything that passes through it. We, too, are like rivers. Life flows through us: experiences, relationships, joys, sorrows, victories, and defeats. Each moment arrives, makes its impression, and moves on. The question is whether we will be like a river that flows freely or like a dam that tries to hold back the inevitable movement of time, creating stagnation where there should be flow, pressure where there should be peace. The past becomes problematic not in its existence, but in our relationship to it. When we refuse to allow it to pass, when we hold a hostage in the prison of rumination, we create a peculiar form of time travel that benefits no one. We send our consciousness backward while our body remains in the present, creating a split in our existence that leaves us perpetually divided, never fully anywhere, always partially elsewhere. This division exhausts us. It drains the color from the day by forcing us to view it through the filter of yesterday. Regret is one of the heaviest stones we carry from the past. It is a weight of if only and I should have and why didn't I? Regret convinces us that somewhere in the architecture of our history, there was a perfect choice we failed to make, a correct path we somehow missed, a version of our story that would have unfolded flawlessly if only we had been wiser, braver, or better. But this is an illusion, a cruel fiction we tell ourselves that keeps us chained to a moment that no longer exists. The truth about regret is that it asks us to judge our past selves by standards we could not have held at the time. It demands that we condemn the person we were for not possessing the wisdom we have now earned through the very experience we regret. This is fundamentally unjust. We made the best decisions we could with the understanding we had, the emotional resources available to us, and the circumstances we faced. To hate ourselves for not knowing what we had not yet learned is to misunderstand the nature of growth itself. Allowing the past to pass means extending to our former selves the same compassion we would offer a child learning to walk. Yes, there were stumbles. Yes, there were falls. Yes, there were choices that led to pain. But these were not failures of character. They were the inevitable missteps of a human being navigating the magnificent complexity of existence without a map, without guarantees, without the impossible gift of perfect foresight. Forgiveness, then, becomes the bridge between the past and the present. Not forgiveness as a grand, dramatic gesture, but forgiveness as a daily practice of releasing judgment, of choosing understanding over condemnation, of recognizing our fundamental humanity in all its beautiful imperfection. This forgiveness must extend in two directions: outward toward others who hurt us, and inward toward ourselves for the ways we hurt ourselves and others. To forgive is not to excuse or condone harmful behavior. It is not to say that what happened was acceptable or that the pain was imaginary. Rather, forgiveness is a recognition that continuing to punish ourselves or others for what cannot be changed only multiplies the suffering that already occurred. It is choosing to break the cycle of pain, to stop allowing yesterday's wounds to dictate today's possibilities. There is a particular kind of prison we construct from unforgiveness, and we are both the inmates and the guards. We believe we are punishing someone else by withholding forgiveness, but in truth, we are the ones who remain locked in the cell of resentment, rattling the bars of bitterness, serving a life sentence for someone else's crime. Meanwhile, life, precious, irreplaceable life, continues to unfold outside our self-imposed confinement. The past also lingers in the form of identity. We become attached to stories about who we are based on what happened to us, what we achieved, what we lost, what we survived. These stories can serve us for a time, providing structure and meaning to our experience. But there comes a moment when these old narratives become too small for the person we are becoming. The tragedy is that we often prefer the familiar confinement of an outdated identity to the uncertain freedom of becoming someone new. I am someone who is hurt. I am a failure. I am a victim. I am defined by my past success. These statements, whether rooted in trauma or triumph, become cages when we clutch them too tightly. They limit our capacity to surprise ourselves, to evolve, to discover dimensions of our being that have nothing to do with our history. Allowing the past to pass includes releasing our grip on who we used to be, even when that former self was impressive or beloved. The successful executive who can no longer find meaning in corporate achievement. The athlete whose body has changed. The person whose entire sense of self was built around a relationship that ended. These transitions demand a kind of death, not of the body but of the self-concept. And in that death lies the possibility of resurrection, of becoming someone new, someone we could never have imagined while imprisoned in our old identity. There is grief in this process. Real grief, the loss of who we were, even when who we were suffering, can feel like a fundamental threat to our existence. After all, if we are not that person anymore, who are we? This question can feel terrifying. The known, even when painful, provides a certain security. The unknown, even when it promises liberation, asks us to walk into mystery without guarantees. But here's the paradox. We cannot know who we are capable of becoming until we release who we have been. The butterfly cannot discover its wings while still insisting on being a caterpillar. The transformation requires a willingness to dissolve, to let go of the old form even before the new form has fully emerged. Memory itself deserves examination. We tend to think of memory as a faithful recording of what happened, but neuroscience reveals something far more interesting. Each time we remember an event, we are not accessing some unchanging file in our mental archive. Instead, we are reconstructing the memory, and in that reconstruction, we inevitably alter it. The past, in this sense, is not fixed but fluid, continually being revised by the present moment consciousness that remembers it. This means the past we carry is, to some degree, a creation of our current mind. We are not merely remembering what happened. We are actively shaping what it means, how it feels, what it says about us. This is both humbling and empowering. Humbling because it means our certainty about the past may be more fiction than we realize. Empowering because it means we have more agency than we thought in determining how the past influences our present. We can choose which memories to feed and which to let fade. We can choose what meaning we assign to our experiences. We can choose to remember ourselves with compassion rather than condemnation. The past is not as solid and immutable as it appears. It is, in many ways, a story we continue to tell, and we have more authorship in that story than we typically acknowledge. Allowing the past to pass also involves recognizing the difference between wisdom and wounds. The past teaches us. This is undeniable. It provides lessons that can guide us, warnings that can protect us, and understanding that can deepen us. But sometimes what we think is wisdom is actually just scar tissue, hardened places in our psyche that form to protect us but now limit our range of motion. True wisdom from the past is flexible, contextual, and open to revision. It says, "This is what I learned, but I remain curious about what else might be true." Wounds masquerading as wisdom are rigid, absolute, and closed. They say, "All people will hurt me. I can never trust again. The world is fundamentally unsafe." These conclusions may have been necessary for survival in a particular moment, but they become prisons when we carry them forward into every new situation. The practice of allowing the past to pass, then, requires discernment. We must learn to separate the genuine gifts of our history from the burdens we no longer need to carry. This is delicate work, requiring honesty and patience. It cannot be rushed or forced. It unfolds in its own time, at its own pace, according to its own logic. One of the most powerful tools for allowing the past to pass is the simple act of witnessing. Not analyzing, not solving, not fixing, just witnessing. When a painful memory arises, instead of pushing away or drowning in it, we can practice simply observing it with curiosity and compassion. Ah, there's that memory again. I see it. I feel the sensations it creates in my body. I notice the thoughts it generates, and I let it be here without needing to do anything about it. This witnessing creates a subtle but profound shift. We move from being identified with the memory to being the awareness that observes it. The memory is no longer the totality of who we are. It is simply something that is arising in the field of our consciousness. This creates space, breathing room, a small gap between stimulus and response where freedom lives. Over time, with practice, this witnessing changes our relationship to past. The memories don't necessarily disappear, but they lose their charge, their ability to hijack our nervous system and transport us back in time. They become more like old photographs, still visible, still part of our history, but no longer commanding the present moment with the same urgency. There's also something to be said about the role of the body in allowing the past to pass. Trauma and pain are not stored only in our minds, but in our tissues, our muscles, our nervous systems. The body keeps score, as the saying goes. Sometimes, no amount of mental understanding or psychological insight can release what is held somatically. This is where practices like yoga, dance, massage, breathwork, and other somatic therapies become invaluable. They provide pathway for releasing what is held below the level of conscious thought. The body has its own wisdom, its own way of processing and integrating experience. When we honor this, when we allow the body to shake, to cry, to move, to express what has been holding, we create the possibility for a deeper release than thought alone can provide. Ultimately, allowing the past to pass is an act of trust. It requires trusting that we will not forget the important lessons, that we will not dishonor what mattered, that we will not lose ourselves entirely if we release our grip on what was. It requires trusting that the present moment, with all its uncertainty and imperfection, is enough, that we are enough, that life, even with its inevitable pain and loss, is worth showing up for fully. This trust does not come easily or all at once. It is built gradually, through small acts of release, through tiny experiments in letting go. We practice with the small things, the minor resentment, the little disappointment, the trivial mistake, and slowly, as we discover that the world does not collapse when we release our grip, as we learn that letting go does not mean losing everything, we become capable of releasing the bigger burdens. The past will always be part of us. This is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be embraced. The question is not whether we have a past, but whether the past has us. Are we using our history as a source of wisdom and depth, or are we being used by it, held hostage to what can never be changed? This is the inquiry that allows the past to pass while honoring its place in the story of who we have become, opening space for new beginnings. There is a particular kind of emptiness that terrifies us, and yet this emptiness is precisely what makes fullness possible. We fear the void, the gap, the open space where nothing is guaranteed and anything could happen. We rush to fill it with noise, activity, plans, and familiar patterns. We pack our lives so tightly with the known that there is no room for the unknown to enter. And then we wonder why we feel stuck, why nothing new ever arrives, why life seems to repeat the same themes and patterns endlessly. Opening space for new beginnings is, fundamentally, an act of courage. It requires us to resist the compulsion to immediately fill every gap, to remain present with uncertainty, to trust that emptiness is not the enemy of fullness, but its prerequisite. The soil must be clear before new seeds can grow. The canvas must be blank before the painting can emerge. The page must be empty before the new story can be written. Think about nature's wisdom in this regard. Winter appears dead, barren, empty, The trees are stripped of their leaves. The earth is frozen. The landscape seems devoid of life. But this apparent emptiness is essential preparation for spring. Beneath the surface, vital processes are unfolding. The earth is resting, gathering energy, preparing for the explosive growth that will come. Without winter's emptiness, spring's abundance would be impossible. We, too, need seasons of emptiness, times when we are not producing, achieving, or constantly moving forward, times when we allow ourselves to simply be, without agenda, without plan, without knowing what comes next. These times feel uncomfortable because we've been taught to equate productivity with worth, action with value, fullness with success. But this equation is false. The empty space is not wasted time. It is a laboratory where transformation happens. New beginnings rarely arrive where we expect them. They do not typically announce themselves with fanfare or present themselves according to our timeline and specifications. Instead, they tend to emerge in the spaces we have learned to ignore, the possibilities we have not yet imagined, the directions we have not yet considered. If our lives are so full, so scheduled, so predetermined that there is no room for the unexpected, how can anything genuinely new enter? This is why opening space for new beginnings often requires a conscious act of subtraction rather than addition. It is not about adding more goals, more plans, more strategies to our already full lives. It is about removing what no longer serves us, creating gaps in the dense fabric of our existence, allowing breathing room for something fresh to emerge. What needs to be removed varies from person to person. For some, it is toxic relationships that drain energy and limit possibility. For others, it is commitments made from obligation rather than authentic desire. For still others, it is beliefs and assumptions about how life should unfold that have become obstacles to seeing how it actually is unfolding. The specifics matter less than the willingness to engage in this essential work of clearing, of making room, of saying no to what no longer fits, so that we can say yes to what wants to emerge. There is a practice in Japanese aesthetics called ma, the intentional use of empty space. In art, in music, in architecture, the empty space is not seen as absence, but as a vital element of the composition. The silence between notes is as important as the notes themselves. The empty space in a painting is as meaningful as the brushstrokes. The gaps in the structure are as essential as the walls. Our lives benefit from this same principle. The spaces between activities are not merely transitions to be rushed through, but opportunities for integration, reflection, and presence. The gaps in our schedules are not problems to be solved, but gifts to be received. The moments when we are not consumed by doing are precisely when we have a chance to reconnect with being. Opening space for new beginnings also requires us to examine our relationship with control. Many of us operate under the illusion that if we just plan carefully enough, work hard enough, anticipate thoroughly enough, we can control the outcome of our lives. This illusion provides a sense of security, but at a tremendous cost. It closes us off from possibilities we cannot foresee, opportunities we cannot manufacture, and paths that only reveal themselves when we stop trying to force a particular destination. Control is seductive. It promises safety and certainty, but in reality it offers neither. Life is inherently uncertain, fundamentally unpredictable, gloriously uncontrollable. The tighter we grip the illusion of control, the more we suffer when reality refuses to conform to our plans, and the more we close ourselves off from the beautiful accidents, the surprising developments, the unplanned miracles that can only occur when we loosen our grip. This does not mean becoming passive or abandoning all intention. Opening space for new beginnings is not about drifting aimlessly or abdicating responsibility. Rather, it is about holding our intentions lightly, remaining flexible about how they might manifest, staying open to better possibilities than we could have imagined. It is the difference between steering a boat with a rigid determination to reach a specific point regardless of conditions, and navigate with awareness of both our destination and the wind, the currents, the changing weather, adjusting course as needed, sometimes discovering that the wind is taking us somewhere even better than we originally planned. Fear often masquerades as prudence when it comes to new beginnings. We tell ourselves we are being realistic, responsible, practical. But often we are simply afraid. Afraid of failure, of disappointment, of looking foolish, of discovering our limits. These fears are understandable and human, but when we allow them to dictate our choices, when we let them close the door to possibility, we pay a price that compounds over time. The tragedy is not in trying something new and failing. The tragedy is in never trying at all, in reaching the end of our lives and realizing we spent in the prison of our fears, never testing the boundaries, never discovering what might have been possible. Regret for what we attempted and failed at is painful but bearable. Regret for what we never tried, for the life we never dared to live, for the person we never allowed ourselves to become. That is a deeper sorrow. Opening space for new beginnings requires us to develop a different relationship with failure. In our culture, failure is often treated as shameful, something to be avoided at all costs. But failure is simply information. It tells us what does not work, what needs adjustment, what assumptions were incorrect. Every successful person has failed repeatedly. The difference is that they viewed failure as part of the process rather than as a final verdict on their worth. When we create space for new beginnings, we must also create space for failure. We must give ourselves permission to try things that might not work, to explore paths that might lead nowhere, to experiment with approaches that might prove misguided. This is not recklessness. It is honest acknowledgement of how learning and growth actually occur. We do not grow by repeating what is safe and known. We grow by venturing into uncertainty and discovering what we are capable of. There is also the question of identity that arises with new beginnings. Who are we if we are not the person we have always been? What happens to our sense of self when we choose a path different from what everyone expects? These questions can feel destabilizing, even threatening. We have invested so much in our current identity, in the image we present to the world, in the story we tell about who we are. To open space for new beginnings might mean revising that story, disappointing some expectations, revealing dimensions of ourselves that we have kept hidden. This requires tremendous courage, but also tremendous honesty. Are we living a life that reflects who we actually are or who we think we should be? Are we making choices based on our authentic desires or on internalized expectations from family, culture, or society? Are we allowing ourselves to evolve, or are we trying to maintain a fixed identity that no longer fits? Opening space for new beginnings might mean disappointing people. It might mean letting go of roles that others have become comfortable with us occupying. It might mean admitting that the path we've been on, however impressive or secure, is not actually where our heart wants to go. These are difficult conversations and uncomfortable transitions. But the alternative, living a life that is not truly ours, performing a role that does not reflect our authentic self, is a slow death of the spirit. One of the most powerful ways to open space for new beginnings is through the practice of beginner's mind, approaching life with fresh eyes, as if encountering it for the first time. This Zen concept suggests that expertise, while valuable, can also become an obstacle. When we think we know how something is, we stop seeing how it actually is. Our knowledge becomes a filter that limits perception rather than enhancing it. Beginner's mind is a willingness to not know, to be surprised, to discover something new even in familiar territory. It is the opposite of cynicism, which believes it's seen everything and nothing can surprise it anymore. Beginner's mind maintains a sense of wonder, an openness to possibility, a humility about the limits of its understanding. This practice can be applied to anything. The relationship we have been in for decades. Can we see our partner with fresh eyes, noticing qualities we have overlooked, discovering dimensions of them that our habitual perception has missed? The work we have done for years. Can we approach it as if for the first time, finding new angles, new possibilities, new meaning? Even our own thoughts and feelings. Can we observe them with curiosity rather than assuming we already know what they mean? Opening space for new beginnings also involves learning to recognize and follow what calls to us, even when it does not make logical sense. There are stirrings in the soul, whispers from some deeper place within us, intuitions that point toward a direction that our rational mind cannot justify. These quiet callings are easily drowned out by the noise of daily life, by the demands of responsibility, by the voices of practicality and fear. But these callings matter. They are the soul's way of indicating direction, of saying, something lives here, something worth exploring, something that could bring you alive in a new way. They might come as an unexpected fascination with a subject, a persistent daydream about a different kind of life, a sense of longing when we see someone living in a way that resonates with something unacknowledged in ourselves. To honor these callings does not necessarily mean immediately appending our entire lives. It might mean starting small, taking a class, having a conversation, reading a book, dedicating an hour a week to exploration. It means treating these inner stirrings with respect rather than dismissing them as impractical or impossible. It means creating small experiments where we test whether this calling has substance or is merely a fantasy. Sometimes what we want to begin is not a dramatic external change, but an internal shift, a new way of relating to ourselves, a different quality of presence, a fresh perspective on our existing circumstances. These internal new beginnings are just as significant as external ones, perhaps even more so. After all, we take ourselves with us wherever we go. If we do not change our internal landscape, changing our external circumstances will not ultimately satisfy. Opening space for new beginnings internally might mean developing a meditation practice, engaging in therapy, taking up journaling, or any other practice that creates space for self-reflection and inner work. It might mean learning to observe our thoughts and emotions with some distance rather than being completely identified with them. It might mean developing the capacity to choose our response rather than simply reacting from habit. The concept of kairos, the right or opportune moment, is relevant here. The ancient Greeks distinguished between chronos, chronological time, and kairos, the qualitative experience of time, the moment when conditions are ripe for something to happen. Opening space for new beginnings involves developing sensitivity to kairos, to the moments when the door is open, when the opportunity is present, when timing aligns. This sensitivity requires presence. If we are constantly distracted, constantly lost in thought about past or future, constantly numbed by various forms of escapism, we will miss these moments of kairos. They often pass quickly. The opportunity to have an important conversation, to take a risk, to make a change, these moments come and go. Being awake enough to recognize them and courageous enough to act when they arrive is essential. Opening space for new beginnings also means being willing to outgrow places, relationships, and versions of ourselves that we once needed. This is one of the more painful aspects of growth. Not everything that was once right for us remains right forever. People change, needs evolve, purposes shift. What served us in one chapter of life might constrain us in the next. This does not mean these people or places or former versions of ourselves were wrong or bad. It simply means they belong to a particular time, and that time has passed. Honoring this requires gratitude for what was and courage to move toward what is next, even when doing so means saying goodbye to something beloved. There is a season for everything, as the ancient wisdom tells us. A time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to build and a time to tear down, a time to hold on and a time to let go. Opening space for new beginnings means accepting that we live in time, that life moves in cycles, that nothing stays the same. Resistance to this reality creates suffering. Acceptance of it, while sometimes painful, creates flow. Finally, opening space for new beginnings requires trust in our own resilience. We are more capable than we typically believe. We have survived every difficult day we have faced so far, 100% success rate. We have found ways through challenges that seemed insurmountable. We have discovered resources within ourselves that we did not know we possessed. This track record of resilience is worth remembering when fear tells us that we cannot handle what comes next. New beginnings are not about having all the answers before we start. They are about taking the first step even when the path is unclear, trusting that the next step will reveal itself as we move forward. Life does not show us the entire staircase. It illuminates just the next step. And that is enough. That has to be enough. Because that is how it actually works. The quiet freedom of letting go. There is a paradox at the heart of human existence. We are born into a world where attachment is survival. As infants, we must attach to our caregivers or we will die. We must hold on literally and figuratively, to have our needs met, to feel secure, to know we are not alone in this vast, overwhelming universe. Attachment is primal, essential, encoded into our very biology. And yet, our deepest freedom, our most profound peace, comes from learning to let go, not from detachment in the sense of not caring or not feeling, but from releasing our grip on the illusion that we can control life, possess others, or hold on to anything permanently in a world where everything is constantly changing. This is the fundamental spiritual paradox. We must learn to hold everything we love with an open hand. The quiet freedom of letting go is not dramatic or loud. It does not announce itself with grand gestures or theatrical demonstrations. It is subtle, gentle, almost imperceptible. It is a softening that happens in the chest when we stop resisting what is. It is the breath that becomes a little deeper when we release the tension of trying to force a particular outcome. It is a space that opens in the mind when we stop rehearsing arguments with people who are not present. This freedom is called quiet because it does not need to prove itself or convince anyone. It is confident in its own truth without being aggressive about it. It simply is a state of being rather than a state of doing. And yet, for all its quietness, this freedom is revolutionary. It transforms everything, not by changing external circumstances, but by changing our relationship to them. What does it mean to let go? This question deserves careful consideration because there are many misunderstandings about what letting go entails. Letting go is not giving up or becoming passive. It is not about stopping to care or ceasing to try. It is not resignation or defeat. These are the caricatures of letting go, the strawman arguments that those afraid of it use to justify their continued clinging. True letting go is much more subtle and powerful. It is a release of our attachment to a specific outcome while maintaining our commitment to our values and intentions. It is a willingness to do our best while accepting that the results are not entirely within our control. It is a capacity to love deeply while acknowledging that everything we love will eventually change or end. Consider a parent watching their child learn to walk. The parent cares deeply. There is tremendous love and investment in this process. But the parent cannot walk for the child. They must let go, allowing the child to stumble, to fall, to figure out through their own experience. Holding on too tightly, trying to prevent every fall, would actually prevent the child from developing the skills they need. Letting go, in this case, is an act of love and wisdom, not abandonment. This metaphor extends to so much of life. How many of our relationships suffer because we try to control the other person rather than allowing them to be who they are? How much do we suffer because we insist that life unfold according to our plan rather than accepting the path it is actually taking? How much energy do we waste trying to force outcomes that are not ours to force? The quiet freedom of letting go includes releasing our attachment to being right. This is perhaps one of the most difficult attachments to release because being right feels good. It confirms our worldview, validates our decisions, proves that we see reality clearly while others are confused. But clinging to being right creates endless conflict, both internal and external. It prevents us from learning, from growing, from seeing other perspectives that might be valuable. When we let go of needing to be right, we create space for curiosity. Instead of defending our position, we can inquire into other possibilities. Instead of arguing to win, we can converse to understand. Instead of proving our point, we can explore the truth together. This does not mean we abandon our values or stop having opinions. It means we hold them with some humility, remaining open to the possibility that we might be wrong, incomplete, or missing something important. Another profound letting go involves releasing our attachment to specific roles and identities. We become so identified with being the strong one, the successful one, the caretaker, the victim, the expert, or any number of other roles that we forget these are just temporary positions we occupy, not the essence of who we are. When we cling to these identities, we create suffering for ourselves and limitation for our growth. The quiet freedom comes when we realize we're the awareness that can observe all these roles, not the roles themselves. We can be the strong one in one moment and vulnerable in the next. We can be successful in one domain and a beginner in another. We can care for others and also receive care. We are much more fluid, much more multidimensional than any single identity can capture. Letting go also involves releasing our grip on how we think other people should be. This is revolutionary and extremely difficult. We have so many ideas about how our partner should behave, how our children should develop, how our friends should support us, how our colleagues should work. These expectations create a constant source of disappointment and frustration because people rarely conform to our ideas about who they should be. The freedom comes when we begin to accept people as they are rather than as we wish they were. This does not mean accepting harmful behavior or staying in relationships that do not serve us. It means seeing clearly what is true rather than what we want to be true, and then making conscious choices based on that clarity rather than on the fantasy of who we hope they might become. There is tremendous energy locked up in resistance. When we resist what is, when we argue with reality, insist that it should be different, refuse to accept what has already happened, we create internal tension that exhausts us. This resistance is like pushing against a wall that will not move. We put all our energy into the pushing, but the wall remains unchanged. All we accomplish is our own exhaustion. Letting go of resistance is not about liking what is or pretending it is fine when it is not. It is about accepting what is as the starting point for any constructive action. We can only work with reality as it actually is, not as we wish it were. Acceptance is the foundation for effective action. When we stop wasting energy on resistance, that energy becomes available for actually addressing the situation. The quiet freedom of letting go includes releasing our attachment to permanence. We want things to stay the same, especially when they are good. We want to freeze the perfect moment, preserve the current relationship, maintain our youth and health, keep everything we love exactly as it is. But this desire fights against the fundamental nature of reality, which is change. Everything is impermanent. Everything. The beautiful sunset fades. The child grows up and leaves home. The body ages. The career that once defined us comes to an end. The relationship that felt eternal evolves or concludes. Fighting this impermanence creates suffering. Accepting it, while sometimes painful, creates peace. This acceptance of impermanence does not diminish the value or beauty of what exists now. In fact, it enhances it. When we know that this moment is temporary, that this person we love will not be with us forever, that this phase of life will pass, we can be more present with it. We can appreciate it more fully. We can say the words that need to be said, have the experiences that call to us, love more openly because we understand that nothing is guaranteed. There is a Buddhist practice of contemplating impermanence, sometimes called death meditation, though it is really more about life. By regularly reflecting on the truth that we and everyone we love will die, that everything we have will eventually be lost, we paradoxically become more alive, more present, more grateful. The practice strips away the illusion that we have unlimited time and forces us to confront what actually matters. Letting go also involves releasing our attachment to outcomes in favor of commitment to process. We set goals, make plans, work toward particular results. This is natural and often necessary. But when we become overly attached to the outcome, when our happiness and sense of worth depend on achieving a specific result, we create a setup for suffering. The quiet freedom comes from committing fully to the process while holding the outcome lightly. We do our best, we engage fully, we work with dedication, but we also acknowledge that the results are influenced by countless factors beyond our control. Our peace of mind does not depend on the outcome. It comes from knowing we showed up authentically and gave what we could give. This is a serenity prayer in action. The wisdom to know the difference between what we can control and what we cannot. The courage to engage with what we can control, and the serenity to release what we cannot. So much suffering comes from trying to control what is uncontrollable and from neglecting what is.